Why, hello there, Meditechers. It's Megan Jackson, your friendly social media strategist. Just wanted to start our newest episode of MediTalks Live, where we're going to be going over the top 5 interview questions that will stump you. So I know we've been going over our programs in different career fields in past episodes, but we really wanted to kind of sit down and give you some more advice on exactly what to do when you're looking for a job after the program, because that's what we're here to do, not only give you that knowledge to start a new career field, but also give you that advice in order to break into it. So just to let you know, we've actually, well, I've talked to our instructors, our human resources department, and our career counseling services and student services, and kind of gotten their opinions on exactly what are the top 5 hardest interview questions and exactly how you should answer them. Because I know when you go into an interview, it's really easy to kind of be blindsided by some questions that people ask, and you don't want to leave that interview saying like, man, I wish I would have thought of that, I wish I would have said this or said that. It's just really our attempt to help you plan ahead when you're on that interview process. So 5 questions and 5 ways to answer them. We're gonna go ahead and get started. So the very first question that has popped up that actually was discussed by most of our instructors and Patricia, our career counselor, is a very simple question, but you may not know exactly how to answer it because it's so broad. So this question is none other than the tell me about yourself. You get right into the interview and they ask you, like, sit down, would you like some coffee, would you like some water, and then you break out the interview process and start out with tell me about yourself. So what exactly should you say? And this is what Patricia, our career counselor, said in regard to this question. She said, believe it or not, most people don't answer tell me about yourself question well. As a conversation starter, many managers still ask the question. Hiring managers are looking at how well job seekers are organizing their thoughts. Most ramble on with irrelevant information. And job seekers should focus on the part of their life that brought them to this job, the part of their life that will prepare them for this role. And I think that's actually a good rule for the majority of the questions that pop up, is just making sure that you're being concise and you're staying relevant, unless they're clearly asking you a question about your personal life or what you do outside of work and stuff like that. If it's going really great and they're just kind of wanting to get to know you as a person. But obviously these essential kind of 4 or really initial questions are going to be more relevant specifically to the job. And then also Audrey, our medical transcription instructor, had something to say on this topic as well. Is you want to discuss your professional self and your accomplishments when it comes to a business situation. If you had not had transcription experience, for example, you can cite how you selected a medical transcription program because you have great attention to detail skills and you wanted a profession that you could work from home doing. You want to flesh out things you cannot give more detail about on a resume, like your ability to learn medical terminology and the fact that you scored above 90% on your final exam. Or you can detail how you love anatomy and physiology and how you go online to watch videos of medical conditions or procedures, or how you love beefing up your reference library with reliable websites like Stedman's Online Dictionary, or how you play medical terminology phone applications. Anything that makes you look eager about your profession helps you answer this question correctly. And she says, remember, this is not to discuss your age, your hobbies, your life plans, or other non-business related information about yourself. So really just stay focused on that tell me about yourself question and keep it relevant to previous experience and go into a little bit more detail than what's on your resume. And definitely make sure that, working in some personality is really important during an interview, but obviously during this kind of breakout question, this preliminary question, it's just kind of breaking the ice and saying how you're a good candidate for this position. But yeah, so that's number 1, tell me about yourself. And number 2, tell me about a time when blah, 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 blah. So it's kind of like a situational question where they're wanting to see how you reacted to something. And Patricia, again, our career counselor, had a very, very good rule to follow that I thought was really interesting. She calls it the STAR method, and so that's an acronym. So S, describe the situation, so when, where, etc., like where the problem arose. And then T, task given and assigned, so when this was happening, or what was going on, sorry. So what was going on specifically. So making sure that you describe the situation and then the task that you were given. And then A, actions taken, so what you did, how you actually implemented those tasks, and maybe went a little bit beyond those tasks. And then R, the results, or the outcomes. So really focusing specifically on the A and the R. So don't spend too much time describing the situation and the tasks, because that's just background information. They really want to know how you kind of stood up out of the crowd and really shined in that situation, in that really rough situation. So, and I'm just going to read her comments on it as well. Is many job seekers make the mistake of talking generally. They are expected and asked to describe one specific instance or one moment in time. Other job seekers waste 10 minutes in describing the situation and tasks involved, and never get to the part of what they did to do, or what they did to generate results. Sorry, I'm tripping over my words today. It's the last two that would win the employer over. Recruiters are trained to identify STAR elements and give points accordingly. So this is actually a method that a lot of professional recruiters are aware of. So just make sure that you use STAR. So situation, tasks, just focusing a little bit on those, and then actions and results. So make sure that you're really focusing on what you did and how that affected that situation when they talk to you about a situational kind of problem, or a situation, when they ask you a situational sort of question. But yeah, so, and I think those are always really tough, so make sure that before the actual interview, you can either go online and look at some really specific questions that they may ask. But I mean, obviously they'll probably ask something about what was a difficult situation you're in and how did you get out of it? Or what was a situation where you weren't getting along with a coworker, how did you handle it? So just make sure for all of those instances you kind of have in the back of your head, different situations that you can describe, and make sure that you're describing them to the very best of your ability. And that's exactly what I do as well. I think I kind of want to talk about this a little bit, because it's not really a question, but something that you should definitely do is prepare for your interview. Do some research on the company that you're applying for. Make sure that you have, multiple copies of your resume. Make sure that you do some, like I said, research about the company, but also some practice. So think about these questions and kind of have those answers in your head. And I personally, when I go on an interview, really like to get there early. So maybe around 30 minutes early, so I know that I get there on time, or at least aim to get there 30 minutes early. So if I run into traffic or trouble, I, have that built-in time. But I also just really like to compose myself, and I'm sure a lot of people really like to do that, because I get really nervous in interviews. You have somebody right in front of you that's really kind of judging your merits and judging your abilities. So you want to show your best self, but that's really nerve-wracking. So maybe just, getting there early, kind of either sitting in your car or sitting maybe in a chair that's outside the actual office, but maybe on the floor that you're supposed to go to, and just kind of getting in the right headspace is very, very important. And I mean, now that I think about it, we should probably do a video on specifically that, but then also video or phone chats, because I know a lot of people, especially for medical transcription, are wanting to work from home and are probably working for companies that are based in other states or other countries. So it's really a different kind of skill set for that, now that I think about it. So maybe we can do a video for that in the future. But so the third one is one that I always have a pretty decent amount of trouble with, is what is your biggest weakness? So I always feel like this is a spot where you have to kind of learn how to word what you're going to say in order to show that you're humble and you realize that you're not like perfect, but then also show that you had ways of fixing that or overcoming that weakness. So like that weakness doesn't hinder you significantly. And so just from looking, doing some research online, as well as hearing from, you know, our instructors and Patricia, there's 3 things that you can really focus on doing, and that's, you know, discussing your non-essential skills. So if you really want to point out a weakness, you can focus on something that's, you know, a little bit smaller, and not something that's going to hinder your day-to-day activity. And just making sure that, you know, they're aware that you're recognizing that weakness, but also stating something that isn't too essential. Exactly. So, and then mention skills you have improved upon. So maybe something that was a weakness, but then saying something about how you are working or did work to overcome that. So either you're in the process of overcoming it or you have already overcome that. So, and I think probably the latter is a little bit better, you know, stating something that you have actually worked through and have gotten over it, and you've really been able to kind of eliminate that weakness, but you still recognize maybe that it's there and it can affect you, so you keep that in mind. And then the third thing, turn a negative into a positive. So just kind of figuring out a weak point that you can use in order to state that, you know, it may be a little bad if it's overdone, but can still be positive. And a lot of people use like the perfectionist kind of aspect, like, oh, I'm a perfectionist, but I've really worked on abilities or time management skills in order to say at this time, like I'm going, no matter how it is, I'm going to finish this project or something like that. Or I'll spend the extra time outside of work in order to make sure that I still maintain deadlines, even though I'm a perfectionist. So see how that can be a negative thing, but it also shows that you're dedicated to your work and you can flip it in order to make it something positive. So I'm actually going to read some examples of this one, just because I feel like this is definitely one of those questions that you really have to think about a little bit before. So I'm going to read some examples so y'all can kind of know a little bit more about how you can phrase your own. So one is, when I'm working on a project, I don't want to just meet deadlines. Rather, I prefer to complete the project well ahead of schedule. So that's probably for somebody who maybe had issues with time management. They make sure that they focus on completing things ahead of schedule. So like I said before, when you're going to interview, you can have that kind of leeway time in case something goes wrong. So kind of actively fighting against procrastination or issues that may arise when you're working on a duty at your job. So, and then I have another example. So being organized wasn't my strongest point, but I implemented a time management system that really helped my organization skills. So there again, you're mature enough to recognize your weakness, which could be a significant weakness, but because you recognized it, you took action and were able to implement an actual system in order to prevent that weakness from taking over and from hindering you. So it kind of shows that you have the maturity to recognize weaknesses and then also be the proactive kind of personality to get outside your comfort zone and really attack it and prevent it from hindering you. And then the third example is, I like to make sure that my work is perfect, so I tend to perhaps spend a little too much time checking it. However, I've come to a good balance by setting up a system to ensure everything is done correctly the first time. So making sure, so that I feel like that's still kind of time management, but really focusing on the fact that you have a system to work efficiently. So when you are being a perfectionist, it's not taking extra time. You're able to do it all in one spurt rather than, you know, copy after copy after copy, or revision after revision after revision. You're just able to take something, look at it, revise it, make it perfect, done. You know. And then the fourth question is, why should we hire you? That is such a tough question, because I know a lot of people, especially I feel like women in general, tend to kind of diminish their value. And when they have questions that really ask them to kind of bolster themselves or really give them a chance to show their confidence, it can be a little unnerving. So don't be afraid to brag about yourself during a job interview. Like, that's the point where you're supposed to be talking about yourself, talking about your accomplishments, and showing this new company that you are able to bring that same kind of spice that got you those accomplishments at your last job to this position, right? So some major points of suggestion when somebody is asking you this question is to remain concise. So don't ramble. Make sure, just like the tell me about yourself question, that you talk specifically about relevant relevant components to this job. So making sure that you don't talk about your personal life or talk about things that can be read as irrelevant, even if maybe you think they are a little bit irrelevant. So just stay within the work sphere or your career sphere. And then also another good thing to note, which I was actually about to say, is to think about the job listing and make your answers relevant to that specifically. So even though we were just saying remain concise and remain relevant to work, even going a little bit more specific. So making sure that you really read and understand the job description before you go into the interview, and making sure you use that verbiage or emphasize those qualities that they have on that job interview or on that job listing during your interview. So I definitely think that's really, really good, or a really good piece of advice. And a lot of the times what I end up doing is actually printing the job listing for myself and putting it in a nice folder or a nice kind of like binder that you can take on your job interviews in order to store your resumes and the job listings. So then you can either bring it out during your interview if you feel comfortable, if you feel like that wouldn't be a faux pas, or you can actually, look at it beforehand, look at it, while you're sitting in the office or sitting in your car, kind of getting your head in the game before you go into the interview. And then also focus on your uniqueness. So not only your previous experience, but also why you stand out from other people and why you think that you can bring something to the table that other people can't. So just really making sure that you're emphasizing that, and not solely that you can, do what's on paper or on that job listing, but also the extra kind of spice that you can bring to the table. So maybe if you're talking about, management of a team, for instance, you can talk about how not only have you had that experience managing a team, but you also try to bring a particular culture to your team where they feel, connected and supported, and that actually boosts the efficiency of your team. So making sure that the interviewer understands that you go above and beyond what the job listing specifically states. But yeah, so, and I'd actually really love to hear what other people have for suggestions for that, because I know it is really hard to kind of, focus on your uniqueness, because you don't go around talking to other people who are, applying for this job. So you can't just be like, oh, I'm going to listen to this person talk about their answer, and then I'll be like, oh, okay, but I can bring this extra thing to the table. So if you have suggestions on how to really focus on your uniqueness in a job interview and how to really explain the extra things you bring to the table, I'd really, really love to hear that. So you can comment down in the comments below when you watch this video. And then the very last one is, I think, one of the most important ones that people sometimes forget. It's the, do you have any questions for us? And the very worst thing that you can do at the end of an interview when people are asking you, upwards of 10, 15 questions about yourself during the interview is not to show your interest in the company by not asking questions. And it also, I feel like, shows that you haven't done a lot of research into the position itself, because it's, of course, there's other aspects of the position that can't solely be on paper on that job listing. So there should be things that you asking them about the culture of the environment, how, like, any issues that people have run into in the past in this position or something like that. And I actually have written down some suggestions for questions that you can ask, but you can really easily, like, if you're going into a job interview, just Google, top questions to ask your interviewers during an interview, and they actually have some really good suggestions. But the very top one that I came up with was, what's the number one issue facing your business right now or facing this team? So you kind of understand, show that you're really wanting to jump on into that situation and really trying to, remedy that situation. And then also that you're really trying to understand the issues that you may face once you start the position. So it kind of shows your initiative, and then also your the detail to which you're trying to understand the team or the position itself. And then some other ones that were suggested by our instructors was, what do you expect me to accomplish in the first 60 to 90 days? So again, kind of showing, I'm ready to hit the ground running. I'm ready to, make change at this organization, and that's what I can bring to the table. And then third one, what are the common attributes of your top performers? Which can then lead you into describing how you have those attributes as well. But then also I feel like it kind of shows that, it kind of shows the culture of the environment at that company, which is also really important, because realize during an interview, you're not solely just being, you yourself aren't solely being interviewed for that position, you're also interviewing them to make sure that it's a right fit for you. Like, it's a two-way street. So if those attributes seem like something that you're just not interested in or you don't fit in, don't be afraid to be like, guys, I'm sorry, like, I don't feel like this is a good fit for me. And that, I know it's kind of scary, and I know it can be really upsetting if you're, looking for a long time for a position. At some point, you just have to get a job. But also realize that your happiness matters as well. It's not just solely, the money aspect, but it's also, your happiness and making sure that you are progressing in your career endeavors, like that this job is actually going to bring something to the table for you and help you kind of build your resume in order to get where you want to get, 3 more questions or suggestions for things for you to ask them. What are the 1 or 2 things that really drive results for the company? So really just getting straight and hitting the nail on the head, talking about what that company cares about, and so you can kind of frame how you're going to do things if you get hired. Because, if they care solely about numbers and revenue versus, engagement on social media or something like that, you have to realize that you really need to focus on initiatives that drive those results or drive those things that company cares about, even when maybe you care about something different. And that's another instance of, that two-way street. What do they hold as important, and what do you hold as important? And then what do employees do in their spare time? Definitely really getting an idea of that culture, seeing if you actually enjoy working there. And if, that is kind of a trade-off. Maybe the company can't pay you that much, but you really love working there, or maybe they pay you a lot, but people hate their lives when they actually get a job there. That's a good thing to kind of pick up on. And obviously you can't ask that, very directly, but maybe this question can kind of help, get that help. And then the last one, how do you plan to deal with blank? So this is really an instance where you show that you've done your research on the company. And that's one thing that you really do want to implement or show while you're asking these questions, or even during your interview answers in general. It's just showing that you've done your research on the company, seen kind of their struggling points, and seen their triumphs as well, and talking about them. So showing that you actually had enough interest to really do research on the company itself. Just so and so you can. I think it's really just to show that you care enough about the job to actually do research on a company, because if you don't even know what they do or what they sell or whatever, like, why would they hire you? So how do you plan to deal with blank is just an instance where it's like, hey, I've kept up with you on the news, like, how do you plan on dealing with this merger or something like that? But yeah, so those were the top 5 questions. I'm going to go over them one more time. So the top one, tell me about yourself. Tell me about a time, ooh, I'm losing my voice. Tell me about a time when blank, so that situational question. What is your biggest weakness or weaknesses? Why should we hire you? And do you have any questions for us? So those are the top 5 questions that we've received from our career counselors, our HR department, and our instructors, as well as, you know, out on the interwebs, that they have suggested that stump people in interviews, that they've seen people get stumped by in interviews. So hopefully now those questions won't be any issue for you. So definitely, if you have any other suggestions or any other questions that you feel like have stumped you and want some advice on how to answer them, let us know. You can give us a shout out on Facebook, or tweet us at Meditec Tweets. We would love to hear your thoughts. But otherwise, I'm signing off. Thanks for joining for this episode of Meditec Live, and I hope you join us, next time. Later!